Good morning, Warriors. Back with another episode of Vigor Warriors 2 and the 1% Club. Hope you guys are doing well today and hope you guys are on your purpose and everything is going well. I gave a final exam, so I figured I'd do one of these to kind of get back into the rhythm a little bit. Thank you guys so much for the donations, likes, comments. We're up to 1,200 already. It's going like crazy. So I'm glad we're getting the word out. Like I said, I've been asked a few times, but I'm not going to monetize at this point because this is not the purpose of what I was doing. So I want to make sure that we're getting this message out. So please go ahead and like, comment, continue doing that. Because the only time I probably wouldn't do that, I know a few people ask me about this, but the only time I would do this is probably just to try to enhance the channel and do it that way, because that's not the major purpose I'm doing this for. I'm doing it because I feel like there's a real problem we have right now in our society. And the big problem really is that people are losing, and we're talking about men now for the most part. Women have the same issue to some degree, but not the same as I'm talking about. So men have an issue about becoming weak, and they're too weak, and we're propagating this in our society. We're trying to kind of encourage men to be weak by losing their energy, looking at pictures, not standing up for themselves, and diets are terrible. All these things are happening, and it's becoming the point where men are not going to be able to do those things we're expecting. That's protect, provide, these type of things and show leadership that men need to have. And so as a person who was 61, I felt like it's time for me to go ahead and kind of give back a little bit. The people have been giving to me all these years and try to help people. So that's kind of what I'm doing it for. Perhaps at some later point, I may decide to monetize, but at this point, that's not the case. And we got a ways to go before that's even considered. So let me go back to the next one now we're going to do. And we're going to talk about a very interesting one because I had a number of comments here. And even Mike yesterday was talking about a solution to this a little bit. So let's talk about this. We're going to kind of title this one, I think, Marriage Relationships During Semen Retention. And how do you control yourself during marriage and solid relationships you have with somebody, long-term relationships, especially obviously if people want to have intimacy and things like that. Now, of course, in the old days, you're right, and I say the old days because some people still adhere to this, but a lot of people don't. Obviously, having intercourse in the old days, a lot of people might not do that until they got married. That was the case in my case because those are the values and ideas that I had. And so you would stay to the point where it wasn't really that important of an issue because you were trying to find someone who was just like you to be with. And obviously that's where a lot of the arranged marriage idea came from all these centuries ago. People felt like, your parents, family members were better to judge who you should be with. And so they were kind of arranged marriages together between families because the families were the ones kind of getting together and trying to organize things. And they would live with each other. And so you're not just marrying the person, you're marrying the family. Now, in this day and age, we have lots of issues with marriage, and people talk about those. They don't want to get married. There's a lot of legal things going on there, a lot of illegal traps and things that people get into. So they don't really go ahead and get married, and that's becoming less and less. Relationships, people have multiple relationships now, and they're not going to a single person. Why do we talk about this as being important? Well, obviously, the more temptation you have as a male, the more possibilities you're going to have to releasing energy, and you're going to become weaker. So you try to find one person. Now, all the comments that we kind of talked about here, I'm going to kind of put together here. So one of the comments was the fact that we talked about in the Bible. They talk about, well, if you can't control yourself, this is I think in the New Testament, you need to get married. That's because you can't control, and you're wasting all kind of energy, and you're not solving the purpose that you're trying to get to. And as DSM Tech said, you're trying to procreate. This is the purpose we have. We're trying to have children to continue our generation subconsciously. Now, from a conscious standpoint, you may be just looking for pleasure, and this is why you're doing this. But the idea, guys, you're looking for is a long-term goal. And you should have that self-control, self-restraint to say, okay, I'm going to only do this at certain periods of time. Now, in our society, it's very difficult to get that restraint because you have all these images, internet, phones, everything around you, people walking through it, barely have any clothes on. All these things are images that make it difficult. But we have to learn self-control. Now, is it something you do forever? Well, no, of course not. There's going to be times where you're going to want to have intercourse, right? So one of the other things, and I think I'm going to go back to things that Matt Craven said. Thank you, Matt. Eduardo said, we're going to add a lot of these. John Jennings asked the question as well. So intercourse without releasing, does it get rid of attraction? Okay. If you retain, are you able to procreate during your wedding day? John Jennings had a good question. And is monk mode a reality in these serious relationships you have? God created marriage to control urges. We had Gigi, Gonegirl 777, Giovanni, all these people made good comments. DSM, once again, procreation is part of life. Looking for a mate, Eduardo said the same thing. Can non-transmitting cause a drain, right? What other ones did I have for this one? Okay. So the idea then we're talking about is what people are concerned about, and I understand it. If you retain, will you be able to procreate when you need to? And secondly, can you have intercourse with someone who is interested in having intercourse, married wife or girlfriend, and still retain? Okay. Well, Mike and a few people have put together some ideas here that I think are interesting ones because I've applied those in my life. So the highest level of control is your ability to not do something that you may feel like you want to do. Say, for example, releasing when you have intercourse. According to a few people that have sent messages, and I know in my case, you can do pelvic exercises in which you're not actually releasing. Now, the question still comes up because of your thought pattern and thinking, are you still releasing and are you attracted? Do you still have, if you still have intercourse, are you still going to be attractive? Well, remember, the attraction comes from the energy level. Are you losing a little bit of energy even if you don't release? Probably are. I mean, we're talking about, unless you go completely monk mode, you're probably, and even that, you're still releasing a little energy. If we're talking about emotional energy especially. Now, I'm not too sure about the physical energy when you're not releasing, but from an emotional standpoint, you are releasing some energy, of course. You're taking the effort, you're going to get exercise, you're going to lose some energy. But the question really is what is the long-term goal? What you want to do is save as much energy through your life as you can because you're going to need that energy to do all those purposes a real man does. And in those kind of cases, you need that energy. So when you have relationships with people, you have to kind of practice it. And like I said, if people are interested, there are exercises you can do to actually be with somebody, but also not release. Now, we hear that as being a bad thing, sometimes in our society along our health industry, but it really is not a bad thing if you're doing it for this reason. On the other hand, right, you want to make sure that you're giving to your partner, if your wife, and if you're going to have a child, there's going to be times you're going to release. Trying to have a child, not succeeding a few times, you're still going to release. That is not what we're talking about in a lot of these cases. We're talking about an epidemic of people who are just releasing ad nauseum over and over and over again, right? And you don't want to have that. You want to control that. Moderation is the key here. Now, the reason I go really hard on this is because I had so many years of not being able to be strong enough. To be honest with you, I wasn't strong enough, And because I wasn't strong enough, I had to go complete monk mode. And I broke that monk mode about 160 days ago. And chances are it's going to be broken again because I'm still getting used to trying to be strict on myself. But the thing is, when it comes to NoFap and things like that, you have to kind of build a habit. And some of you young guys, I'm 61, some of you younger guys, you have a better chance to build that habit early. And that's why we're talking about this, and we're trying to get this message out. So we talk about retaining you're able then to control. But we also talked yesterday about having that sexual drive. If you're able to transmute it, if you're able to recognize that sexual energy, not let it overcome you, you should then be able to have no trouble procreating when you need to. But you're building it up. Now, is it going to be a little more challenging? Probably so, because you haven't done it for a while. But think of the opposite effect even worse. Because I know people who have dysfunctional behavior at 21, 22 years old. And it's because they've had so much of the images and so much releasing that they can't do it when they actually have a person in front of them. Because it's not the same as the picture. It's not the same as the fantasy. So the thing is that you have to realize is that doing it with the real person is the key when that is the right time for you. And once again, in my book, I go back to the old-fashioned days. I think you're doing it only if you have somebody you're married to or someone you want to have kids with, once again, in the crux of marriage. Now, I realize a lot of people don't like the marriage idea, and I get it. I understand it. But again, as you look at things, you have to make a good choice about who you are going to be with and who's going to share your vision, your goals. And by having intercourse with that person before there's a commitment of any kind, is you're running a dangerous game. I see this happen to a lot of students over the years, and a lot of friends of mine over the years. They got too intimate too fast, and they blew out the relationship. Because the idea is that you are focusing on the physical so much, you're not realizing, does this person really have values and ideas like mine? Do they have the same set of values? Do they look at life similarly? Do they share the same values, ideas? That's the kind of thing you're looking at to get a partner. The physical nature comes along with that. The children come along with that. You're building families and those type of things. But again, it goes back down to your nature. Is it something that you're focusing on as part of your goals? If you're out there just having fun, and you're just going to have a little pleasure here and there, it may feel good for a couple seconds. That's about all it is, right? And all of a sudden, now you feel a tremendous amount of guilt. And if you've broken your streak, if you feel that guilt. Now, you don't feel the guilt when you have intercourse with somebody. Not the same way you feel like when you have it. And so releasing is something you can do. Now, if you're a person that got a person, a person you're with, and you're trying to have intercourse and you release, well, those things are going to happen. But as I said, there's ways you can kind of, stop yourself from releasing. And that's an important thing. And this is when people talk about being, not premature, but going ahead and having a long-term, regular type of intercourse type of session. So we talk about these questions that Matt and Eduardo, John is talking about. It's important to kind of look at this as very valuable questions. So a shout out to all you guys on this. I don't believe attraction goes down. I believe that you do lose a little bit of energy, probably from an emotional standpoint if you have intercourse without releasing. But obviously releasing, you're losing a lot more. But the thing is if you don't do it a lot of times, you're going to build that retention back up. And you're going to be just as attractive because you now have this ability to look at someone and be confident and draw that person to you. But again, what is the purpose? Are you really wanting to do that? Why? If you're just looking for a number of ego boosters, I call them, that's not really accomplishing anything. Those are not really real. Those are people just reacting to your energy level. It makes you feel good, flattering, sure. But do you want to take that step? What are the consequences of having intercourse with that person? The other question is, are you able to procreate during your wedding day? John had a good question. I think that there should be no problem with that because you're not really losing your energy. You're just transmuting it. And you can call upon it anytime you really want to. But again, you have the choice to do that. You're in control of that, not someone else. And sometimes we've lost control of that, and I think that's where the problem occurs. Monk mode of reality in serious relationships. I think, Edward, you make a good point. It's very difficult to have monk mode. This is why monks are by themselves. It's very difficult to do that. However, I do think for those people like myself who was in a position where you just can't control it, you've got to go to an extreme. Once you go to the extreme, if you find somebody and you're able to adjust and you get enough strong, then you can make more of a choice and you're not going to fall back into that pattern. Monk mode, certainly, for those people, this is what I talk about in the Bible. If you can't control your urges, it's better to get married than to be multiple partners all over the place. And that's how the Roman Empire fell. That's how Sodom and Gomorrah fell. That's the Babylons. That's the Incas. Everything you look at, their moral values decayed. Instead of having some values, they decided to just go ahead and just push those on, get away from God, and just move away from it. So, very valuable questions. Not transmuting can cause a drain. I don't know if a drain is maybe the right word, but I think there's some value to that. If you're not transmuting, you're getting very frustrated. And eventually, you're going to have emotional drain of some sort, and you're also going to get some physical drain, probably so. I think, once again, as we look at DSM Tech and Edward stating some good points as well, we're all looking for a mate. We may not say that, and that may be barbarian in some cases to say that kind of stuff, but you're looking for a mate. I mean, really, when you come down to it, when you look at males and females, very rarely, my friends, when you have a situation where two people are male and female, they call them friends, very rarely does both of them not, at least one of them, like each other more than that. They're not willing to let on. Of course, they don't want to hurt the friendship. But rarely is that the case. Males and females are just biologically nature attracted. And if the male is the beast-like mentality we're talking about, then they're going to be strong. They're going to attract those women who want protection, security. They love it. They want that. They want that sense of danger, that prediction that you can't predict this person. This person is a strong individual, and they can lean on that person, and they want that. There's a lot of women, and the women who don't want it, well, you just move on to something else. There's lots of those people out there, lots of women out there, lots of men out there. And I don't know if that was the last one I was going to cover, but those are some interesting points. And I'll continue to do shout-outs tomorrow, but I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit. So, guys, the long-term thing, and back out to Gigi, Gonegirl 777 and Giovanni, I think it's important to recognize that marriage does allow you to control urges because you got the one person you're working with instead of all these other people. And a lot of times, the one person, it kind of melds into a love type of situation besides just the intercourse. When you have lots of other people out there, you tend not to have those feelings for other people. That tends to be more of a physical thing. And that's really what you want to avoid. If you're doing it within the shades of love and you really care about this person, you're building a relationship with that person, whether it be it a marriage, I would recommend marriage. A lot of people nowadays, they live together in different types of forms of it. But to me, the commitment part is the biggest part. Without that, you're not really kind of getting anywhere. You're not having that person take the risk and go out there and commit to something. But regardless of that, you're still in a situation with one person. If that person's your one person, there's a more of a chance then that you're going to be able to control those urges with that one person because you're going to develop more of a loving relationship with that person. So I do think that that's probably a better option in my opinion. But I also do understand what's happening in our society, and people are afraid of getting married, and people are afraid of, not just having one interaction with one person and not having a number of them. So I get all that. But I also think you have to kind of look at the other side of it a little bit too. All right, so I hope I covered this one a little bit. So once again, we're talking about relationships, long-term relationships like marriage and going out with someone, and how does that work with semen retention? And the whole key again, guys, is that you want to focus on what is this person in your life as part of your goals? What do they mean to your goals? And what are you willing to kind of give to them in return to what they give to you? Is it a fair exchange? All right, guys, until tomorrow, We'll talk tomorrow. I think our next topic is going to be women will look at you even if they are with another man. This is Leo and Animal Islam, I think it is. So we're going to focus on theirs tomorrow. And once again, we'll do some shout outs again tomorrow. And then we'll do Thursday, we'll try to do technology a little bit here. Or, I'm sorry, we'll look at nocturnal emissions. Okay? All right, guys. Until tomorrow, have a great day. Until we talk again, God bless each and every one of you. Remember, every day is a new day to a wise person, wise warrior. God bless you guys, and battle on.